The Supreme Court is set to review Hawaii's restrictive concealed carry law, a significant legal battle that has captured national attention. This case is not just about one state's legislation, but about the broader implications for gun rights across the United States. The law in question has been criticized for its stringent requirements, which many argue effectively prevent law-abiding citizens from exercising their right to carry concealed firearms for self-defense. This pivotal case follows the 2022 Bruin decision, which reshaped the legal landscape for gun laws by emphasizing the historical context of the Second Amendment. The Bruin decision set a new standard for evaluating gun regulations, requiring that they be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Hawaiian gun owners argue the law nullifies Second Amendment rights by making it nearly impossible to carry handguns in public. They contend that the law's requirements are so onerous that they effectively deny citizens the ability to protect themselves outside their homes, a right they believe is guaranteed by the Constitution. The court's decision will clarify the balance between individual gun rights and state regulation for public safety. This balance is a delicate one, as states strive to protect their citizens from gun violence while respecting constitutional rights. The outcome of this case could redefine how states can regulate firearms and what constitutes reasonable restrictions. This case is crucial as states like New York and California face similar legal challenges. These states have enacted their own restrictive gun laws, which are now under scrutiny in light of the Bruin decision. A ruling in favor of Hawaii could embolden these states to maintain or even strengthen their regulations, while a ruling against could force them to reconsider their approaches. The ruling will set a precedent for gun legislation nationwide, impacting lawmakers and citizens alike. It will guide future legislative efforts and court decisions, shaping the landscape of gun rights and regulations for years to come. Lawmakers will need to carefully consider how to craft laws that both protect public safety and respect constitutional freedoms. The core issue: is Hawaii's law a public safety measure or an infringement on fundamental rights? This question lies at the heart of the debate, challenging the justices to weigh the state's interest in preventing gun violence against the individual's right to bear arms. The decision will have far-reaching implications, influencing not only legal standards, but also the national conversation on gun control and individual liberties. In 2023, Hawaii enacted one of the nation's strictest concealed carry laws, requiring that anyone wishing to carry a concealed firearm on private property must first obtain explicit consent from the property owner. This means that unless a business or homeowner specifically says, yes, carrying a concealed weapon is not allowed. The law is clear: the default is no, unless permission is granted. This marks a significant departure from previous practices, where concealed carry was generally permitted unless a property owner posted a sign to the contrary. This shift has changed the daily reality for many residents and visitors, as the rules for where firearms can be carried have become much more restrictive and complex than before. The law also designates a wide range of sensitive places where firearms are completely banned, including schools, public beaches, bars, government buildings, and even certain parking areas. These locations are now strictly off-limits for anyone carrying a gun, regardless of whether they have a permit. These sweeping restrictions have ignited passionate debate across the state. Supporters argue that the law is necessary to protect public safety and reduce the risk of gun violence in crowded or vulnerable areas. Opponents, however, see it as a direct challenge to their constitutional rights. Gun rights advocates claim that the law effectively amounts to a near-total ban on carrying firearms in public, making it almost impossible for law-abiding citizens to defend themselves outside their homes. They argue that the right to self-defense is being undermined by these new restrictions. The result is a confusing patchwork of rules and exceptions that can be difficult for even experienced gun owners to navigate. Many are left uncertain about where they can legally carry and fear accidentally breaking the law. Now, the issue has reached the highest court in the land. The United States Supreme Court is set to determine whether Hawaii's law is a reasonable regulation or an unconstitutional overreach that infringes on the Second Amendment. The court's decision will have far-reaching consequences, not just for Hawaii, but for how all states can regulate firearms in public spaces. The outcome could reshape the balance between public safety and individual rights across the country. Hawaii's gun law faced immediate legal challenges, with a federal judge initially blocking its enforcement. The Ninth Circuit reversed this, siding with Hawaii, citing historical precedents for public safety. This conflict led to an appeal to the Supreme Court, seeking clarity On the Bruin decision's application. The Supreme Court's full review signals its importance in defining gun rights. The case highlights confusion over applying historical tests to modern laws. A definitive ruling will guide future gun legislation across the U.S. The Supreme Court's upcoming decision on Hawaii's gun law is poised to have far-reaching consequences, not just for the state itself, but for gun rights and regulations across the entire country. This case has drawn national attention, as it could set a precedent that will influence how states and local governments approach firearm regulations for years to come. If the court upholds Hawaii's law, it could give states more authority to require explicit permission before someone can carry a firearm onto private property. This would mean that property owners could have greater control over who is allowed to bring guns onto their land, potentially leading to stricter regulations in many states. Supporters argue this would enhance public safety and respect the rights of property owners. On the other hand, if the Supreme Court rules against Hawaii, it could significantly limit the ability of states to impose such restrictions. This outcome would be seen as a major victory for gun rights advocates, who argue that the Second Amendment should protect the right to carry firearms in most public and private spaces without additional hurdles. At its core, this case is a test of the boundaries set by the court's previous Bruin decision, which expanded gun rights. The justices will now clarify exactly where and how the Second Amendment applies, especially when it comes to the intersection of individual rights and state authority. The outcome will directly affect the daily lives of millions of American gun owners, shaping where they can legally carry firearms, whether that's in their cars, on private property, or in public spaces. It could also influence how gun owners store and transport their weapons, and what responsibilities they have when entering different types of property. Beyond individual rights, the decision will have a profound impact on public safety policies. Law enforcement agencies, city officials, and community leaders are all watching closely, as the ruling could redefine how they balance the rights of gun owners with the need to keep public spaces safe and secure. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's decision will redraw the map of Second Amendment protections in public and private spaces, shaping the future of gun rights and regulations in America for generations to come. The Supreme Court must define sensitive places where firearms can be banned. Hawaii's broad definition includes parks and bars, sparking debate over public carry rights. Challengers argue it creates a de facto gun-free zone, contradicting the Bruin decision. The court will examine historical precedents to determine if Hawaii's list is constitutional. The ruling will impact states with similar laws, shaping where guns can be carried. A decision will influence the practical application of the Second Amendment nationwide. The Supreme Court declined to hear Missouri's appeal on its Second Amendment Preservation Act. The law sought to nullify federal gun regulations, conflicting with the Supremacy Clause. Federal courts blocked the law, siding with the federal government. The Supreme Court's inaction leaves the block in place, reinforcing federal law supremacy. This decision prevents states from disregarding federal laws, maintaining constitutional order. It underscores the importance of federal authority and nationwide law enforcement. The Supreme Court's decision on Hawaii's law will set a new direction for gun rights in America. A ruling for Hawaii could validate broad gun-free zones, complicating gun ownership. A ruling against could expand gun rights, forcing states to narrow sensitive place definitions. The decision will define the modern scope of public gun rights and state regulation. The Missouri non-decision reinforces federal law supremacy, shaping future legal battles. The nation awaits a decision that will intensify the debate over guns in society.